Hello and welcome to the Tuesday edition of NBL Now, brought to you by Code Sports, your number one place for basketball. I'm Kelsey Brown, joined today by one of the best big men in the league when he played, Chris. So you've done it all. Welcome back to NBL Now.
Hey, Kelsey. Thanks for having me again.
I'm excited to talk about these big men. We saw so many amazing performances over the first 4 rounds. JLA, McGee, Humphreys, Magnay. He was amazing on Sunday as well. But I want to ask about one of them that's probably flown under the radar a little bit, and it's Jesse Edwards. How have you seen his performances, and why is no one talking about Jesse Edwards?
You know, we're talking about him, and maybe because we are in Melbourne, but Jesse Edwards, for me, look, JaVale McGee is the most talented unicorn-type centre in this league, but for me, Jesse Edwards may very well be the second best big in the NBL. And I say that for a number of reasons. The other guys you listed, JLA needs the ball in his hands. Humphreys prefers to have the ball in his hands. Tyrell Harrison's not the type of athlete that Jesse Edwards is. They're all fantastic players. Sam Magnay, I thought, had an exceptional game against JLA with his ability to stretch the floor and was dependent on his shot. I think we've got, and it's so great to see so many fantastic bigs in the league this year. But Jesse Edwards is just the absolute best fit for a United team that I think got their import combination as correct as they have in 5 or 6 years this year. And he fits so well with that team. He's so efficient. And what you need from a big when you have a scoring backcourt is efficiency. And I think of all the guys we've just listed, Jesse Edwards is the most efficient by far.
We've got a small sample size, but Melbourne United start the season 5-0. Do you think he's someone that can be in the best player discussions by the end of the year?
I don't think you'll ever be there, but I think you'll be in championship discussions. And I think on the other side of that, the defensive attitude that he provides, he fits into that United defensive culture. Some of the other guys that float in and out a little bit, but we talk about JaVale McGee's athleticism and size and how unique he is, and I agree. But Jesse Edwards isn't that big a step behind. He plays above the rim. He finishes incredibly well at the rim. He's got very good touch from the free throw line, and it's one thing that opposition teams aren't going to get away with like they can with JaVale is you're in a bit of trouble, foul him, put him on the line, and you expect one of two perhaps, but Edwards is a very serviceable free throw shooter as well. So, no, I really, really like him, and I think he's been a really big part and will continue to be a really big part with Chris Golding coming back into the lineup of why United quite rightly deserve to be championship favourites right now.
You mentioned the first two, so you think McGee and then potentially Jesse Edwards. Who's your third top big at the moment?
Well, I think all those guys, because I wouldn't say any of them in the league are incredibly consistent where you look at them and say any one of those bigs is the first guy in a team. I think McGee, you would argue, is the number one guy, Illawarra for now, and Tyler Harvey would probably disagree, but they're clearly a 1-2. I don't think any of these other guys are clearly one of the absolute 1-2s in the team, nor do I think Jesse Edwards is. But I'm not big to rate them numerically. I've always believed the comparison's the thief of joy, and I have a lot of joy watching these talented bigs, but look, I just think over the course of the year, he's going to be the one that absolutely every single game is going to be a problem. I don't see Jesse Edwards having off games where you look at his box score and, he's got 3 fouls, 4 points, 3 rebounds, and had a really quiet, inefficient night. And I think some of the other guys you'll still find have inefficient nights where they don't shoot the ball well.
One of the biggest matchups coming up tomorrow night in the Ignite Cup is JLA up against Tyrell Harrison. How have you seen Tyrell start to the season? It's been rocky for Brisbane anyway, but as a big man, your thoughts?
Really solid. And I think Tyrell, the one thing I wish for Tyrell is he continually remains healthy through this season, and we see what he's able to do with a long stretch of games under his belt, and he struggled with that for various reasons over the last few years, but he's got incredible touch around the rim. He's a big body, doesn't play above the rim, and we saw the matchup against JaVale McGee, and you always had a sense that JaVale would be comfortable against a big body who didn't match his athleticism. I think the ceiling, even at Brisbane, he needs to be great. He needs to be really fantastic for Brisbane to be great. And he's not the sort of guy where you say, put the ball in Tyrell's hands and let him have 25. He's dependent on other guys around him. And at the moment, he's not getting the type of, or the quality touches from Adams and a few of those others who seem to be trying to prove that they belong in this league and can play well within their own rights in the backcourt. And at some level, Tyrell's missing out on that team. JLA's a little bit different. I think there's a greater level of comfort in what JLA is doing. There's probably a greater sense of continuity with what the Perth Wildcats are doing. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup because for me, those two, their best are both incredibly good. And when I say their worst, I don't mean the fact that they're bad players. I mean, sometimes both teams just go away from them. They don't get touches. So I continually hope that the bigs get touches, not just in the first few possessions of a game, but throughout the entirety of this game tomorrow night.
You're big on the bigs, but I also want to talk about the little men. Now, we had probably the matchup that everyone was anticipating the most happen on Saturday night. It was Bryce Cotton up against KD. And we saw Cotton, he was held to single figures. That is rarely done. We've spoken a lot about how good the defensive prowess of Brian Goorjian and what he put together was for that game. What do you think about Bryce? Where do you think his head's at after that game? And do you think he's seething a little bit? Or, where do you think Bryce's head would be at after a game like that?
Bryce would have slept absolutely fine knowing he's one of the greatest players in the league, one of the greatest players in the history of the league, and he had a bad night or a quiet night. I don't think he would have lost any sleep over it. Bryce Cotton is someone who never has to worry about one game as an absolute outlier. And that was an outlier. I wouldn't expect to see another one like that from Bryce in the very near future, but sometimes it's nice to have them. Bryce has come and had exceptional games to start the season with Adelaide. We all know how high he sets the bar, and by his own admission, he believes that bar should be set high. So he'll know that was a quiet game. But he doesn't lose his ability. He doesn't lose his confidence after one quiet game. That's all it was one quiet game for one of the best players this league's seen.
Is that concerning for the 36ers? Does that show a big gap of where they need to work on and how teams can shut down the 36ers?
No, I think it's exciting because it gives them another element to the blueprint of what teams might do down the track or when playoffs arrive. So I think it just gives them another layer to work on, another area to improve in. And, the what if Bryce Cotton has a quiet night scenario, it gives them that in their back pocket, and they've seen it now. So I think it helps them be even more prepared moving forward.
For the Sydney Kings, KD, it was a big night for him. I know that he was nervous walking in. You could sense it in the stadium. And I think there was times that he got rattled by the energy that was surrounding him in the stadium. But I also think he just managed to find a way. He managed to still get his buckets. He managed to have a really great performance. How did you see the storylines that entered that game with KD and how he handled that?
The funniest storyline was I liked how there were a number of people thought that Brian Goorjian, the game had gone past him and he couldn't coach anymore. It's a little bit like Bryce Cotton. When you're one of the greatest of all time, you know exactly what you're doing and there's always a bigger picture. And at any given time, you can pull out a game plan that might be a little bit outside what you do week to week, but is going to work. And that's what we saw with the Kings. I thought it was an absolute coaching masterclass, for lack of a better. We're not going to see that every week, but you also got a game out of the box from Kawatnoy. And I know Mark Worthington's been on this podcast talking about the importance of the Sydney Kings perimeter players or their shooters knocking down shots. And we saw that. And that allows all of the other guys to play in more space and you have a greater sense of freedom. And we saw that with KD. I mean, we know him as a personality. There's always going to be emotion involved. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. But I think the only thing that was a surprise was how comfortably Sydney took care of Adelaide. But it just reminded people what they're capable of. It did show that when they knock down perimeter shots, how potent they can be. But, I mean, it's no secret. Like any team, it always helps to knock down a few shots. But it was a surprising result. I thought we were in for a really close game, but it never looked like Adelaide were in that game.
Yeah, they absolutely dominated the Sydney Kings from the start. It never looked like 36ers got into their rhythm. For KD, though, he mentioned how the team, the coaches, the Sydney Kings really gathered behind him for, like I said, what would be a difficult game. How did you view that? Do you think Sydney Kings stepped it up a level when it came to culture in that game. Teammates really rallied, and one of them was Kelly LePepe, who's not playing at the moment, out with that ACL. I think they really showed up for KD.
Yeah, I don't think anyone. I think if you have to turn up in one game anywhere, you're doing yourself a disservice. Other games, I believe culture's an every day of every week type thing. It's not something you just turn on and off or improve overnight. They were emotionally up for the game as they should be, but I think you'll find that team, and there are a number of others around the league, and United probably sit at the top. If their culture's great, even when they lose, there's no finger pointing, there's no head dropping. It's we lost, they beat us, we move on, and we go again. And they're up and they play well. But I certainly don't buy into what I believe a culture of a club to be based on body language of 2 hours of a week. I know that Sydney are fine. I know the Gorge knows how to get guys together. Yeah, they're up, but I never questioned their culture nor their motivation. I think their motivation exists every game.
They're a part of two big Ignite Cup games tomorrow night, actually. Tas versus Sydney, Perth versus Brisbane. Out of those games, who have you got? Tas getting it done at home, Perth getting it done at home, or is it the others?
Yeah, the Tassie game is going to be a really, really interesting one, and still fascinated to see their imports more often. Still fascinated to see Josh Bannon's development, see how, Will Magnay, when we speak about bigs, is a highly credentialed big, but probably started the season a little bit one-paced, I suppose. A lot of eyes are going to be on Brisbane to see if they can respond. You talk about culture. I'm not sure they know what their culture is yet. I'm sure they would like it to be a particular thing, but we haven't seen it yet. So interested to see what they look like. And there is growing pressure on Brisbane to understand if they can be competitive this year. They put together a team on paper that should be competitive. It hasn't proven to be yet. So I'll probably watch that one with a bit of interest to see if they come out and it looks like they've prepared with the type of emotion required to win a game, and look like perhaps what Sydney did to the observers in this game just gone, because I'd want to. The season's slipping away from Brisbane really, really quickly.
And lastly, I'm going to give you three teams, and I want to know which of the ones you're most concerned about. Breakers, Taipans, or Bullets?
Probably the Bullets, but I was really interested with the New Zealand Breakers to, the Breakers, when you talk about culture and what they're trying to build, they put together a team on the floor, and I love it. They've almost gone back a decade or a generation to the Breakers are in New Zealand. The core of the Breakers is New Zealand and the New Zealand players. And I've watched with interest that Kirk Penny, resigned from a coaching role at Wisconsin, was at the game on the weekend where they lost to the Phoenix. So if the New Zealand Breakers are genuine about putting together a program where the core of it is absolutely Kiwi-based, all of a sudden Kirk Penny's available, Paulie Hanare's available. I just wonder if there's a move to be made at the Breakers where they go another step towards making it all New Zealand. That for me, that's a watch this space for me.
Absolutely love your insights, Chris Anstey. Thank you so much for joining us on the Tuesday edition. This one's been brought to you by Code Sports, who has your NBL covered like no one else. Expert analysis and insider access on and off the court. You can head to codesports.com.au. Thanks again, Chris. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks, girls. Well done. You too.